Well, there are more comments, possible solutions, suggested strategies coming from all quarters about the recent security challenges facing the country. Well, yesterday, the Vice President did ask the elites to speak up. He says they need to rise up and speak the truth against forces of division in this country. And you heard them in some of the dailies we reviewed saying the country, if we need to preserve the unity of this country, they need to speak the truth.
Well, you know, that's not just going to go away. I mean, he was making the comments, you know, while with all progressive Congress leaders from the Southeast, you know, chieftains and all of that. And these are his exact words. We cannot afford a war in this country. It is the political elite that will determine what will take place. If we keep quiet, if we say nothing and hope that things will just normalize, we may be wrong. And we may find ourselves heading for something much worse than we're seeing today.
Well, he further explains that every civil conflict in the country is as a result of elite failure and the failure of the elite to speak up and tell the truth to their communities. He also says, quote, "The thing about the kind of conflict in these parts of the world is that it's usually a war without end. Everyone who thinks that they have some money stored up somewhere is wrong. You'll eventually run out. Everyone who thinks they can go and hide somewhere, you won't even find a place in the end. Everyone will suffer. Parents, children, young people, and old people will suffer."
Well, of course, he, in that same breath, recalled what happened in Somalia in the 90s when he went to work there with the United Nations, saw a Supreme Court justice, whom he had known before, queuing up for food in the aftermath of civil conflicts in that country. So it's not something that is just going to go away. Of course, a good number of political leaders were there at that meeting where he was saying that.
Well, yes, indeed. So those are some of the issues and more that we will be considering this morning. So we're going to toss right straight to Abuja to start off that conversation. Mapa.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us in the studio, I guess I'm allowed to say, one of Nigeria's elite. Mr. Dane Mwaya, who is the national chairman of Zenith Labour Party. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Are you going to accept that you're one of the elites in the country?
Well, if you consider the level we are today,
yes,
you can put me as an elite. I won't deny that.
Indeed. So if you won't, I mean, would you agree with the Vice President's statements that the elite will determine what will eventually happen in this country? Yes, even far more than that. On the issue of insecurity, it has become very clear now that we are overwhelmed, both the executive, the legislature, and even the security forces, the security agencies that are supposed to prosecute this fight against insurgents. It has become also clear that use of force alone is not enough to stem what we are having today. I agree with him. Very soon, there will be no place to hide. So, what do we do in the circumstances? I think we should try as much as possible to key in the Nigerian people. I've been doing some work on this insecurity, and you ask yourself, what is the role of Nigerian citizens? They are not carried along in this fight. No, we must take them along, let them believe, let them key in, let them believe that we have common share in the nation on equal basis. They must accept the country as their own, which is not what we are having today. We are having different people, you know, fighting different wars. And more importantly, today in Nigeria, you agree with me, Nigeria is more divided. In fact, it is deeply divided more on ethnic lines than on religious lines. And I'll give you some examples. You see, take for example, the Hausa Fulani. When I was growing up, I thought Hausa is Fulani, Fulani is Hausa. But it has come to our
consciousness that the Hausas are now trying to separate themselves from the Fulani, to the extent that during the struggle for whatever it is, people forget religion and come together based on their ethnic lines. Just like the Meeti Allah, which is now saying that the Fulani is the landlordship of Nigeria. You come to the Southwest. The Southwest, Christian, Muslim, you can say it's 50-50. But when it comes to that agitation, everybody drops religion.
But let's not forget, I mean, these groups, I mean, I get the point you're trying to make.
Yes.
But these groups, they are really small groups that tend to speak for almost everybody. I mean, they have, I don't know, or maybe, I don't know whether we've given it to them or whether they have collected it for themselves, the license to be able to speak on behalf of their ethnic groups. But oftentimes, they only represent a very tiny fraction of these populations.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Just like coming to the Southeast on the issue of IPOP Biafra. There is a gentleman who saw an opening and got into it. I agree. The elites are not there. I said in a sister station a few days ago, or a day ago, that look, it is that way because the elites have refused to key into it. And I understand very well what the Vice President was saying. If you come to the issue of Meeti Allah, how many are there? IPOP leadership, how many are there? If you come to the Kanuris that are saying a different thing, due to the Southwest, how many are there compared with the population of the area? It is so because we have not keyed in the citizens in the fight against insurgency, against insecurity. We cannot continue to say, okay, let us use force all the time. Carry the citizens along, let them protect within their environment, and then you can see when something happens, you see people run away. The chief of the Minister of Defense the other time said that we are cowards, even though he retracted it. But I understood him very well. Nobody wants to sit down and allow himself to be killed. When everybody has been disarmed, nobody can defend himself. But self-defense is guaranteed by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You can defend yourself once you see that you are likely going to be killed by any means. It is guaranteed by the Constitution.
The question is, I mean, for a number of Nigerians, the question is, what is the state letting us defend ourselves with? I mean, we're hoping that doesn't get to the point, because part of the reason why the state exists is because people have surrendered that, use of force, monopoly of force, so to speak, to the state. And when the state now begins to turn around to say, citizens, defend yourselves, then you have to ask, where is this coming from? I mean, is the state now completely helpless?
I can tell you now that the state is helpless. We don't have to pretend. There are no new ideas on how to handle this. This problem started during the time of President Jonathan, you recall, when they talked about fifth columnists, both in the army and in the executive. And it has enlarged in its numbers. Now, this military, I believe very well that Nigerian military can do away with this within a short time. I am also aware that if they are determined to do it, putting aside their ethnic beliefs, religious interests, face the war as a Nigerian issue, they can clear this mess in 3 months.
Well, you also think that has permeated the security agencies?
Of course.
And you think that is hampering them in the fight?
Even the executive have said so. Even from what you are saying have said it's happening. A lot of people are feeding on this. A lot of people do want this thing to end. They don't want it to end. They want it to continue. So if we are operating this fight against insurgency in this manner, we will get to that point where the Vice President said there will be no place to hide. They are just a few kilometers away from Abuja now. They are hosting flags. That is one aspect. Look at what happened in Owerri, for example. Here you have the correctional center. Little behind it is the government house. By the right of it is where the commander, 34 Field Artillery Brigade, lives. On the other side is police headquarters. Commissioner of Police lives there. People got in there. That is the safest place in Imo State, in Owerri. People got in there, shot for 2 hours, released all the prisoners. Nobody fired a shot. From Obrinze, where you have the 34 Artillery Brigade, at that time of the night, to that point, wouldn't take you more than 7 minutes. Everything stood down. Only for the Commissioner of Police to wake up and accuse IPOP of doing it without any investigation. Without investigation. And IPOP came and said, no, we did our intelligence. IPOP had no hand in what happened in Owerri. Terrorism is now being imported into the safest place we have in the southeast. It is being imported. It is being done by persons who are thinking that this governor should be given restless nights because people have lost power. People have done a lot of things with our resources in the state. I am from that state. I am in the opposition. It is the opposition that fighting Hope Uzodimma. You should not be given a breathing space. You have taken all the money in the state to the point that you are richer than the state. Now you are using it to fight us. You can pay bandits, they now call them unknown gunmen. These gunmen are known. We should stop calling them unknown gunmen. Security agencies should go in and find them.
So you agree with the governor of Imo State that indeed this is being fueled by politicians?
Of course, fueled by politicians. Of course, funded by them. Funded by politicians, fueled by them. I just gave you an example. And people are just, okay, did Hope Uzodimma allow his house to be attacked? Or he would allow under normal circumstances for that to be done? These are people who have lost that in the power equation. And they have to do everything. They have to key into this insecurity situation.
You know, we did speak with another politician in the opposition, in the PDP, as a matter of fact, and he took very strong exception to the statement credited to the governor of Imo State. I'm sad that, I don't mean to deviate from the larger issues.
Yeah, we'll come to it.
But he took exception to the statement made by Governor Hope Uzodimma, saying what opposition, as a matter of fact, that he wants him to be more specific. You just said you're a member of the opposition as well.
Yes.
And he said he wanted to know which opposition in the state is targeting the governor. He said because they're also opposition within the governor's party. So if you have an idea of which opposition, or if you want to narrow it down a little more, is it within the governor's party or is it outside of the governor's party?
Markwe, I expected that response from the PDP. And there are things I will better explain to you in Proverbs. Markwe, if you get to Imo and ask most people on the street where this thing is coming from, they will not think and reason the way and the manner the PDP person, I don't know the person, spoke to you. If you use your tongue to count your teeth, you will know who those people are. Of course, there are opposition within APC in the state. There are opposition. There are a few of them who have lost one way or the other. Then you have the larger opposition. So, looking at it globally in Nigeria.
No. I want you to also start from the southeast, because let's not forget that every region has its own unique problems.
Yes.
The southeast has its own. When the vice president was talking to members of the APC within the southeast, he had a very specific message for them. I don't know if the same message will fit. Maybe it will, because we also seen agitation, secessionist agitations, also from the, some tendencies for secessionism in the southwest as well. In the south is a different kettle of fish. That has been there for a while. North Central now has its own unique problems. The northeast, everybody is aware of the insurgents in the northeast, and the northwest, we've tag them bandits, and that's what's bedeviling the northwest. But the southeast, that has enjoyed some relative peace up until recently, when we started seeing attacks on security men. The most brazen of what we saw was what happened in Imo State. But we've subsequently seen even more. Ebonyi came under attack again, was it 2 days ago, when the Federal High Court there, was burnt down. We've seen security men being attacked. We saw Professor Charles Soludo, security men attached to him were gunned down in broad daylight. Does this also permeate? I mean, if you say that what is happening to the governor of Imo State is specific to Imo, how can we explain what is also happening in the rest of the Southeast?
Okay, let me tell you. I started by telling you that terrorism has been imported into the state, and indeed in the Southeast.
By who?
I've told you, the opposition and the politicians. Look, you cannot. You have to demarcate the place. You have to make the place look as if it has become ungovernable. That is what is happening to the citizens. They don't think so. They know that this is not in their character. They know that they don't do this. They don't do these things. I gave you an example of what happened in the correctional center 2 nights ago, the night before I came back. There was shooting in a place called Amausa. That place is occupied by the House of Fulanis. And Okigwe Road. For another 2 hours. Markwe, do I need to talk to you? Nobody came. People were just peeping through the window. Baba, Baba, you see them. Who dead? This is not in our character. The average Igbo man will not want to be distracted. He wants to go on his... Even this presidency people are talking about. If you fix the country well, allow equity, good conscience, justice, the Igbo man is not interested whether the Fulani man or the Yoruba man keeps this power for 100 years. But allow everybody equal access. So what is happening in the South is, let nobody change the narrative. It is not in our character. These things are imported, and take it to the bank.
A very interesting perspective. Well, we're also being joined by Honorable Dachong Bagos, who is the Deputy Chairman and Anti-Corruption and also member National Security and Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Morning, Mark.
Good morning, Honorable. The House has been quite concerned in recent times. They've asked the President to declare a state of emergency on security in the country. It would seem that that was arrived at unanimously. What was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And right now we hear that you have started or launched or inaugurated a 40-member security committee to come up with, I don't know, you give us the specifics of what the committee is supposed to do.
Yeah, well, serious as the matter and the issue will look like. What the House has just resulted in doing, just like our first line of the national anthem said, "Arise, O compatriots." And the 360 members of the House of Reps represent the entire Nigeria. And looking at peculiarity of insecurity in the country and looking at issues that have been happening, there's no member that has not been affected directly or indirectly as a result of the insecurity in the country. My constituency, I can count how many on daily basis. Pocket of killings, 1, 2, 3 on daily basis. And you find a lot of members like that. So if we don't rise now to the challenge to look at how the issues will be brought to the table, there won't be National Assembly again tomorrow. And state of emergency, some people have been conflicting the word state of emergency, that maybe bringing in state of emergency, there won't be democratic structure or so on and so forth. But far from it. State of emergency on insecurity. On insecurity, meaning giving the president all leeway to look at where, just like you have a rat in your room and every night you can't sleep, you don't know, today you hear the sound here, tomorrow. So what can we do to be able to address that? Now, it's just like a blank check that the National Assembly has given presidency and the executive that, look, what do you have? Bring it to the table. We are ready to approve as long as you will solve the issue of insecurity. And that's what we refer to the issue of state of emergency. And coming to the committee as well, is the committee, in the wisdom of the Speaker, there is no day on the floor of the House that you don't have matter of urgent public importance in terms of insecurity from one member or the other. I say, look, let's all come together and proffer solutions, because for the past 2 years on the floor of that House, resolutions upon resolutions to the executive. And we looked at it. If the executive had implemented 30%, just 30%, of the resolution and advice the National Assembly have been giving the executive, I can assure we couldn't have reached this level. But it has been, to me, been looked at it with a kid vote, with a kid glove, in the sense that, well, it's not our problem, it's a problem of opposition, it's a problem. But now that insecurity have risen to bipartisan, he is no longer looking at who is PDP, who is APC, and so on and so forth. And the essence of that committee that Mr. Speaker inaugurated yesterday is that, look, let's look at the issues very well. And not just looking at the issues, we're going to have a security summit, bring the executive to the table, tell us how can we solve this problem once and for all. And we are trying to change the narratives. Like, yeah, there have been executive summit, security summit, not once, not twice. But this time around, we want to look at the executive. What is your problem? Why can't you solve this problem? Because to us, if we have ways, or we have the executive power to be able to do this, we will. We will. But looking at political will, and I want to look at the political will in two ways. You have the legislative will. Under the political will, you have the legislative will, the executive will, and the judiciary will. And the legislative will, it's been there. The parliamentary will is there that, look, we are ready. The executive, are they ready? What level? How have they been able to take this to what level? Who have been able to, who is now in prison for the past how many years because of terrorism? Who have been arrested? And that's why if you look at our resolution, we said, look, the executive should be able to look at those issues. The judiciary, all the cases that have been in court, that have to do with kidnapping, that have to do with terrorism, who is now in jail?
Some people will say that, watching what the House has done, yes, they can see that you've taken this matter up very seriously. But this is not the first time, because I think you're also planning a summit. Yeah. Which is one of the things that the 14-man panel, or is it committee is also set up to do, to organize that summit. It's not the first summit that will be organized. In the 8th Assembly, the Senate was very worried, was worried enough about security to also organize its own summit.
Absolutely.
And you rightly pointed out the fact that, in this assembly alone, the last 2 years, you've had resolutions upon resolutions, and that if they were to implement 30% of what it is that you would have recommended, perhaps we will not be here. Yeah. It would seem that what has happened is that the executive is derelicting in its duty. Is that correct?
Yeah, I quite agree with you. But let me tell you something. With discussions among members, and if the executive will not take what will come out of this summit very seriously, I can assure you, as parliamentarians and as a representative of the people, which means we no longer have role if we don't call for the resignation of the president. Because this will be like the last resort. This summit between us and the executive, let's come to the table, let's look at the issues, and these are the issues we are now giving you. We have given you a blank check on state of emergency, on insecurity. Whatsoever you want, bring it to the table. We have given you this, and this is a summit we are organizing, brainstorming, bringing in experts all over the country, all over the world, alongside the executive, and we now give you that blueprint, and you don't execute, which means you are not capable.
Robertus, let me ask you, the impression out there, some Nigerians, given the way the leadership of the National Assembly came on board, there are those who think that they don't see them speaking truth to power, in quotes, to the extent that they will hit the nail on the head, having seen the way the country is headed. One wonders, what is the point of setting up this security committee? Is it going to stop the herders from killing people? Is it going to address the the security architecture, which if you check the dailies today, the South and Southwest governors appear to be speaking in one voice, saying the current security architecture is of no use. So what is that committee going to achieve?
Well, I understand the plight of Nigerians, and which has been and which is a concern of each and every one of us. But this committee, this time around, it's going to be like the last hit. The last hit is going to be like the last hit, and which, like I said earlier, bringing everything to the table. What are the options? What are the options do we have? Because we have discussed it not once, not twice on the floor, and especially during the executive session, which was one of the longest executive session that we've ever had in the House, that if we don't do this now, there won't be House of Reps again. And so this we are looking at, the committee will look at all options. The committee will look towards organizing the summit, bringing everybody together. And unfortunately, let me say that the National Assembly, our role to advise and at the same time to make laws, but we always have a last resort, and which most of us members, without fear or favor, will say it anytime, any day, that look, after this last resort of this summit, if nothing is done, brainstorming, spending resources to bring out solutions. If nothing is done and the executive did not do anything after some months of it, then definitely we call for the resignation of the president. We have the power to impeach the president, that he cannot do this. He can no longer secure life and properties of Nigeria. So this is just like the last resort, and we are taking it very, very seriously. Like, we know the discussion we have to take to be able to come to this issue of having this summit. We know how we have to, how members were being talked to be able to understand that, look, okay, this summit that we want to have, let it be like a last shot to the executive, but sincerely, the Chamberlain and to Nigerians, we can assure Nigerians that with the resolutions and with what will come out of this summit, if the executive did not take this summit very seriously or to trash it just like other summits, then definitely the National Assembly will hit the gavel on, look, Mr. President, give way to see who can come and implement our resolutions. Because we cannot continue to sit like this and see lives are being killed on a daily basis. Somebody must be responsible for something at the end of the day. Time has come that we will no longer sit under and sweep things under the carpet or to be hiding behind the curtains. Time has come that we must see things eye to an eye, because now looking at the threats around the country, looking at how infrastructure of Nigeria is being captured, just like the governor of Niger have talked about Shiroro, and people don't understand how critical Shiroro is to Nigeria, where you have the dam, where you have electricity to the country. These people are going and capturing infrastructure that gives life to Nigeria. And I said this like in 2018, that look, check the demography of where these people are capturing. And if you go to Plateau State and you see the demography of where lands have been grabbed, it's where they are all riverine areas, which means they are looking and capturing areas that will be able to give them life and to be able to sniff people out of life. God forbid tomorrow you find them around airport road and airport axis, which means they are going towards the airport. And once the airport is captured, the tower is captured, we are no longer there. Tomorrow, if Radio House is captured, they are strategic in doing their thing. Why can't we be strategic? For them to capture Shiroro, it's not just like that. And God forbid. So this is the last resort we are trying to put up towards this summit. And I can assure you that after this summit, nothing is done. Definitely, you see the gavel from the National Assembly.
But the thing about all of this capturing and what they're doing is that it clearly suggests that there is going to be a long-drawn scenario, because we know how people take land. People will give anything to get their land. So even if they think that they've successfully captured it today, tomorrow, the people will always come back and say, no, this is our land, and they will want to get access to it no matter how long it takes. That's why we've seen cases in court 20, 30, 40 years on land matters. That's how serious it is. But that's on the one hand. But we also have heard a senator speaking about the option of impeachment, as you referenced. He just thought, no, that would be moving from one crisis to the other. So given the way the National Assembly is presently constituted, many don't ever see them being on the same page on the subject matter, because we've been through this before. Even those who suggested it last time out, you saw the backlash. What makes you think that this time around it will be any different?
Well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in giving what will give you a solution a trial. There's nothing wrong in that. And once the executive sees that the people, or maybe people in the same party, are now talking that, look, if you don't have solution, you should go, then definitely they will sit up. And I'll advise the ruling party that, look, what were those points, bullet points, that they promised Nigeria and Nigerians in terms of insecurity from 2015, that they will come and solve the issue of, go back to your drawing board to look at those issues that you think the former administration was not doing, and you were able to convince Nigerians. And when you're talking of national security, you're not just looking at security that have to do with mandatory, and so the economy, the security that have to do with the economy, it's there. What level are we at that level? So they should be able to go back to the drawing board. What is item 1, 2, 3, 4 that you promised Nigerians in 2014, and we're able to get this mandate? Bring it back to the drawing board. And if it's so overwhelming to you, then you look for options. And who are these people coming, giving us these problems? Look, we have been able to identify to some certain level that we have people coming in from the neighboring countries. Yes, we know that we still have banditry within us as Nigerians. I'm happy that the president have seek for the help of United States, and now they are talking of China. But when you look at international relations, or when you are in an environment and your neighbors, the neighbors you have, their houses are not being attacked as your own house, who will you really resort to? You will ask your neighbors, what have they been able to do to be able to solve their problems? Who are our neighbors? You know, we always look at Chad, Benin, and Togo, and all those people as our neighbors. But to me, France is our neighbor, and France controls most of these countries. Have we sat down with France? Because France is our major. France controls the entire neighborhood. France controls even the Gulf of Guinea. Have we sat down to discuss some issues with some of these countries around? Yes, good. We have now reached out to US. We have now reached out. We are trying to reach out to China, but I think we should bring France to the table as well, because we allow such issues and we just resort into mercenary, and we are now looking at, okay, who can supply us with mercenaries to solve our problem. To me, I have not seen countries that mercenaries come in and they go.
Well, the thing about this is
they live in their country and start giving you other issues.
You know, when that call, that comment from the president came through, there was a school of thought that believes that they think they're not sure if we've done all we can locally in the first instance before we then reach out to the Western countries. In fact, they think we need to be careful how we approach some of these countries, including France, because we've seen the history of some of these Francophone countries, how economically challenged they are, the resources that move from those Francophone countries to the country in question, which you're suggesting we should go to. Because, I mean, on a lighter note, Nigerians thought, well, we hope that at the end of the day, you won't hear that Nigeria is now taking loans from France for who knows what. But, you know, about how all of these things are turning out. Do you think that we've done enough locally first before even seeking external help?
Yeah, well, locally, I don't think we have done much locally. But at the same time, it's not out of reach to reach out to international communities. Reaching out to international communities on advisory and support, not for them to come and take charge. Locally, we have been talking, and look, if policing reach to the local level, we'll start talking of state and local community policing. We'll be able to have a way out. But if we just sit down and say that, okay, we are reaching out to the international community, not because of loans, some of us, and we still stand on the issue against some of these loans that we collect from other countries. We're not talking about loans, but when you now look at people that have military might to be able to see how you can be able to discuss with them, come to the table to help you address some of these issues, even if it means accessing their satellite, because they see everything that is happening within the country and within their borders. And if we reach out to France about accessing their own satellite, just on how they control their other countries, not for them to come and take charge of some of these issues, it's going to go a long way. What are these issues? Because we don't have the technical know-how to be able to address some of these issues. And when you are now looking at insecurity as just an issue that is firepower by firepower, then we have not yet gone anywhere. What are those earth equipment that we have? What are the drones that we have? And just unfortunately that Air Force went and now bombed soldiers. It shows that technology was not in place. You just saw people and you think that those were insurgents, and you bomb your own another security outfit.
Well, some of them
technology needs to come in place.
Yeah.
And to me, reaching out to some of these countries has to do with technology, because they have the technological know-how to be able to address some of these issues.
Well, a good thing that you're a member of the Security and Intelligence Committee. Perhaps that will also come, to play in some of your conversations. But let me take this to Sawaya. So many issues have been raised about this matter of insecurity and all, and most certainly everyone is concerned. You heard the Honorable Bago say the other time, made reference to the economic implications of some of these things. And talking about the economic implications, I remember, again, let me just raise it with you, the several pointers to the fact that insecurity is as a result of unemployment, is as a result of poverty. Talking about things that we have not done, what do you think is there for us to do, especially from the states level? Because it will seem like even the states themselves have a challenge on their hands. On the one hand, the front pages of the newspapers tell us that the resources of the states has taken a dive for the lower. And now we're saying that unemployment, insecurity are reasons why we are having, unemployment and poverty are reasons why we are having insecurity. How do you think we should navigate this? Because unless we take care of these reasons, perhaps the problem itself doesn't seem to be anywhere near being solved.
Well, thank you for having me back. I was complaining to Makwe that I have become a spectator. And, we comrades, we complain when we feel injustice. But it's good you are back to me. I want to say that we don't need a security summit for the president to have the political will to act. We don't need a national conference for the president to have the political will to act. You see, the honorable member said, they have said, let the president ask for anything. I think we should be careful, very, very careful. During the tenure of the last service chiefs, there was nothing they asked for that the Senate did not give them to prosecute this war. They asked for everything and they got it to the last couple. It was much later we heard from the National Security Advisor, perfect officer and gentleman, who made a comment regarding to procurement of arms. And you do not keep pushing money into a bottomless pit. The truth is that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria can clear this mess in the shortest possible time if you have the political will. And I know the army. You see, I was very young when I was exposed to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. I want to talk about the army then, because many of them we lived together for 1 year. This current Minister of Defense, General Bashir Magashi, was my classmate in NIPS. That was the time of the Bama years. The Mojakperus, the Godwin Abes, the Bashir, all those top military officers. Whether in the auditorium or at the CAF, you could see patriotism in their commitment to defend Nigeria. There was no religion, there was no tribe. Speak to one at a point, speak to another at a different point, they will say the same thing. But I started by talking about ethnic loyalties overriding the national public interest. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter the amount of money you approve. We have seen it. Even at a point, the National Security Advisor was not in a position to control the service chiefs that are supposed to be under him. We saw it with our very eyes in this country. Let us stop playing the ostrich. Perfect man that could have handled it. This army, is it the same army that General Olusegun Obasanjo, T.Y. Danjuma, the Bamayis and all that of the younger elements led for Nigeria? The army should make up their minds. We don't need a national conference. We don't need a security summit. They know where the problem is. Attack the problem. If you attack the problem, we will clear this mess. But if we cannot, if the army is so overwhelmed that they can do nothing again, they don't have any new ideas, probably Nigerians, we may have to put a hashtag for the dissolution of Nigerian army, so that we can look for young people, retrain them to go and clear. This mess can be cleared. We don't need a national conference.
You know, the thing that you just said now, quickly just raised the question in my head. I mean, you say, I mean, if I'm reading it correctly, you're saying that you do know the Minister of Defense.
Yeah, he was, I know him very well. I've known him since 1992. We were together in NIPS. He was my classmate.
And he said, I mean, he was quoted as telling Nigerians to defend themselves. You remember that statement?
He said that as a lawyer, that self-defense is allowed in the Constitution.
Okay.
He didn't tell you to go and carry AK-47, but you should defend yourself.
Indeed. But, you know, you also mentioned General T.Y. Danjuma.
Yes.
Do you remember the statement of General T.Y. Danjuma asking Nigerians to defend themselves as well?
That is in line with the Constitution, and I have said so today.
No, but he also said something in addition. He said the army was not neutral. The military was not neutral.
Is that different from what I have told you this morning, Magwe?
I'm just trying to connect the dots. I'm trying to help Nigerians connect the dots here.
Okay.
Are there any dots that were missing out in this?
Let me tell you. Let me be frank with you. My constituency is Labour. Forget about those that are bastardized Labour. We don't know how to garnish truth or falsehood. Say it as it is. The truth is that even from the government, they have said so. That's why I said, this army, I have implicit confidence that when they remove all these things, all these mundane considerations, they will clear this mess in 3 months. What is it? Somebody is coming to your land, he's getting more formidable than yourself, your own papa's land. Malco, it is not possible. If they want it and the president has the political will, he will give marching orders to clear this mess. 3 months we'll have peace.
No, the only reason why we're in this mess is truly because the army is not neutral, or the military is not neutral.
Of course. You have heard of some people, they're in the front, they're killing, somebody will shoot them from behind, people will run away, the arms were not. Need to listen to this perfect gentleman, National Security Advisor. He said he could not account for the weapons. And people attacked. He didn't say so again. But he's a gentleman. So before you approve, Honorable, be very careful what you approve. Yeah, because we have not accounted, you have taken your time, allow me to. We have not accounted for the billions of dollars sent for the procurement of arms. The police doesn't have arms. The military doesn't have arms. Or look at them, the guns they carry. And look at the one with the soldiers. These guns are supposed to be first. We have the resources to have guns that you can load, you can shoot up to 300 rounds. Loaded. But these things are not done.
Two other suggestions have been made. Some have come from governors. This is in line with the Constitution, which says defend yourselves. They're saying, you know, let citizens be allowed to carry weapons. Some governors have suggested that. That's on the one hand. They've also asked for state police. Will these suggestions be brought up in the conference which you're planning?
Yeah, a lot of suggestions will be brought up, and even from our executive session. And let me respond to Dan a little bit. That part of our resolution, if you check, we said all the House committees that have to do with insecurity should audit our armory. What have we have approved so far? And the approval is not about resources. We have straitjacket approvals that have to do with the law. There are some issues that before you carry out some things, the law must be amended. So there are areas that the laws must be amended to be able to address some of these issues. A satellite cannot just come and be mounted in a certain area without amending some areas of the law, like NBC. We just amended the NBC law last week to be able to address some of these issues. So a lot of areas need to be, it's not just, so when we are talking of approval that have to do with giving the security agencies a straight way to, it's not about refunding again. We are talking about amending the laws in some certain areas to be able to address some of these issues. And looking at what
there are some who would say that maybe a conference is not what we need. Maybe an investigative hearing is what we need. The same way we investigated, the House investigated, sadly it didn't end well, but the same way the House investigated what happened with subsidy, you know, I think it was in 2012 or so.
Please don't go there.
Well, sadly it didn't end well, but while it lasted, a lot of Nigerians had first-hand insight as to what was happening in that particular sector. Is it possible to beam a light into what has been happening in the security sector?
We gave the chairman of all the security committees in the House 4 weeks to check all these things and to result back to the House, because part of their own resolution will still form part of the security summit. And to disagree with you a little bit that we don't need a summit is that, look, this 9th assembly with a crop of young, intelligent representatives that are so passionate and patriotic in what is happening need to bring in new ideas to the security agencies. Look, if you see the ideas that most of the House of Reps members have in terms of insecurity, information that they have in terms of insecurity, you'll be so surprising that with the kind of ideas they have. And if we are not looking at, look, if the security agencies don't have, or they are out of ideas, let's bring these ideas together and bring and take it to the table. And again, you see, I always say that in the 21st century, you cannot address the issue of insecurity in form of a guerrilla war. It's not possible. Technology needs to come into place.
Honorable, you would agree with me that the day that our security agencies run out of ideas, we're done for.
Absolutely.
We're done for. I mean,
let me advise him.
And this will be your last words, gentlemen. I'm going to ask you 30 seconds each to say your last words on security.
While you are going on with your summit, which will likely fail,
no,
don't put the removal of the president on your agenda, because that will also fail. The president must finish his tenure so that we can write testimonial. Let nobody, whether in the Senate or House of Rep, think of removing the president.
So
all we are calling for the president to do is to have the political will to direct the army to clean this mess.
The president have told the service chiefs not once, not twice, relocate to so place and do this and that.
That is not clearing the mess. That is not clearing the mess.
Have that yielded any result? Not at all. So what we want to take is just like what we are doing is just like defending yourself. The fact that we are not taking arms, but we are defending ourselves by bringing out solutions. We are defending ourselves by bringing out solutions. So looking at those issues, yes, president give out the marching order. to us, we have not seen the political will in the president and in the executive because of the resolutions that we have passed so many years in the House. And that's why we want to like look, this is the last resort. If you don't do this, give way.
Well, I think that this conversation is one that will definitely continue because we know that security is still very much on the front burner, and not just for us here, but we believe also for many Nigerians who are as concerned as we all are about what is going on in the country. So in the coming days, definitely we'll keep an eye on what is happening in the House of Representatives. We'll definitely be bringing you details of that conference when it holds. We have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. Mr. Danny Wayan, who is a national chairman of Zenith Labour Party.
Thank you.
We also had with us Honorable Dachong Bagos, who is the deputy chairman, anti-corruption committee of the House and also a member of the National Security and Intelligence Committee as well. Well, that'll be it for this segment. We'll come back shortly with another topic. Please stay with us.
Well, some of your feedback already streaming in, but let's just get right to it. Well, this one from Mr. Wonsu says, by setting up security outfits in the western and eastern Nigeria, the governors, by this action, passed a vote of no confidence on the president and his military and police.
Wow. Well, this one from Tanko says, it has become very clear that our inability to combat the growing insecurity in our country is lack of political will. God bless my country.
Well, Honorable Alalade says, the number of security personnel across all security agencies in the country is not enough to protect Nigerians. Governments need to recruit more personnel, fund all security agencies adequately, and monitor their activities to fight this war against insurgency.
Yomi begins with a quote. A being not subject to change would be a being outside progress. Continues by saying our major challenge to positive changes in Nigeria are our mindset and approach to governance, leadership, and moral principles. The blame game and feeling of entitlement only puts us in slow-mo.
Well, Paul says, our senators are now afraid of insurgency because it's coming close to them. Posterity will judge us all for the silence and politicking with lives of ordinary citizens. Markwe?
Well, Pastor Olunuga is wondering why it's so difficult to impeach politicians for incompetence, ineptitude, cluelessness, and corruption in this country. That's what Olunuga is saying. And then we have this one from Bruce Wade, who says, legislative will is questionable. How can legislators confirm ex-service chiefs as ambassadors with insecurity becoming worse than when they assumed their roles? How many lawmakers question this decision by the presidency? And the last one here from Andrew Alola, who says, must the legislature convene a security summit before Nigerians have a fresh breath of peace, seeing an opportunity to enrich themselves? It's well with the soul of Nigeria. Well, he thinks that summit is another opportunity to enrich themselves. Maybe it isn't. What if it isn't? I don't know. But we're switching gears now to another topic, and it's one which some people have said, well, it could be the reason why we're experiencing this much uncertainty right now, because another election cycle is coming up. We have off-season elections coming up. The first one is coming up in Anambra a few months away. But the process is what they're questioning. How are we going to get there? There have been talks around amending the Electoral Act. Let's quickly welcome Mr. Clement Wankwo, who is the Executive Director of Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. You're welcome to Sunrise Early this morning.
Thank you, Makwe.
Well, I don't know if you see any connection between the current security challenge we're having and elections that are coming in 2023, but electoral amendments have been promised, and I think they were supposed to have been delivered before the first quarter of this year. Sadly, that hasn't happened, perhaps as a result of where we're currently at. But do you think that we could make progress on it before the end of this year?
I think there's a huge connection. Certainly what is happening is that chickens coming home to roost. Several actions that were taken in recent past is what has brought us to where we are. When people talked about appointing people because they are competent, they had a reason for saying so. But simply appointing people because they're from your clan, they are related to you, they're from your ethnic group, they're from your religion, not looking at competence, that's what has brought us to where we are today. And I think that's what the connection is with the elections, that because the security system, the security architecture has virtually collapsed, you might have a situation where there are open spaces of insecurity around the elections, and the question would be, how can you conduct elections in certain places? Indeed, in a huge number of places. And this has been on since 2011, when elections had to be conducted in IDP camps. Some people were running elections in remote parts of the country from Abuja. They were campaigning without being in the constituency. And now that number of constituencies has expanded incredibly. Police stations have been attacked. People are being killed. People are scared. People are leaving certain areas in droves. So it's a worrying situation looking towards 2023 elections.
It's definitely changing the population. I don't say the demographics now, because it's not just having to do with the type of population that is there, but also in terms of the numbers in certain constituencies. Some areas might be totally empty, and you might find entire populations moving to other areas. For instance, those who have been displaced in the 50 villages in Niger State, for instance, who are now in IDP camps, or those who have relocated from villages in Benue to Benue Central, somewhere in Makodi, and elections are going to take place in places like that. I mean, it definitely just changed what would have happened in the original places and what is going to happen in the places where they currently are residing. How is our, I don't know, is our act taking care of those kinds of situations?
It's worrying for demographics. INEC is struggling. In this week, INEC has been going around looking how to convert polling points to polling units, but this is based on the experience even from the most recent elections in 2019. Looking towards 2023, if you see that the demographics have changed, how are you going to deal with those who were registered at one place but have moved? And a lot of movement has taken place. Even within the FCT, within urban centers like Lagos, like Port Harcourt, things have changed so very rapidly. And I worry for INEC, because INEC is struggling to keep pace with the changes that are going on around the country, especially driven by insecurity. And that's why the INEC chairman, speaking yesterday at the National Assembly, had said to the National Assembly, please, please, can you give us the Electoral Act? And that is a worry of every Nigerian. We have no understanding why the legislative process is not concluding as early as was promised by the leadership of the National Assembly.
Now, Senator Kabir Gaya was initially quite optimistic about delivering it in the first quarter. They said that they had already taken the inputs and what have you. But can you tell us some of the most important changes that we're expecting in the amended Electoral Act?
Two things. First, Senator Kabir Gaya, the House Chair, Honorable Aisha Duku, yes, I'm talking of both Senator Gaya in the Senate and Aisha Duku in the House, had expressed this optimism. But more importantly, the Senate President, Dr. Ahmed Lawan, the Speaker, Dr. Femi Gbajabiamila, had also made the same commitments. And, you know, when you're a political leader and you make a commitment, Nigerians take it seriously. So when you say to Nigerians, the Electoral Act will be passed in the first quarter of 2021, in that position, it confers a lot of seriousness to what you have said. And I think that's the disappointment that Nigerians have. And when you look at the current proposals, what the Electoral Act is saying, or the Electoral Act amendment is saying, is we are repealing the 2010 with all of the amendments made to it and replacing it with a new Electoral Act that captures the three subsequent amendments that were made to the Electoral Act 2010 and introducing new things. And some of the new things includes giving INEC the discretion to decide how to conduct elections. And INEC has gone so very far in deciding that electronics, technology, would drive several aspects of the elections. That is what the new Electoral Act bill has captured. It's also captured the whole issue around increasing the participation and inclusivity for disabled persons. It has also captured how you can collate results of elections and how you can transmit it, and emphasizes that this can and should be driven by technology. So there are a whole lot of innovations in the proposals before the National Assembly. And I do know that the two chambers of the National Assembly had independently looked through all of this. The committees had met several times. Then they had joint sessions, including joint public hearing, where they listened to all of the stakeholders who have views to impute into the electoral bill. All of that had been taken in, and what was now left at the end of this exercise, and this ended in December last year, was to now table it before plenary, and that's why, and that's where now we are looking for where the act is or where the bill is. And I think that 4 months into 2021, and we have no sense of where the bill is worrying. And I think that for a lot of Nigerians, the demand is now strong that the National Assembly should get the work done by the committees into plenary, discuss it, and pass the electoral bill.
Well, I want to believe that you're CSO. I mean, that's something you've done beautifully for Nigerians. You've kept an eye on how that bill has progressed in both chambers of the National Assembly. Is that correct?
Yes, we have followed that very closely.
And they have said that they were going to marry, they wanted the two committees in the House to marry the many changes that were coming into the bill. Have they been able to do that successfully?
Because we followed it closely, we know that the two chambers worked closely together and have a common bill. And those bills, the common bill is now what is supposed to go into the plenary of both chambers of the National Assembly. And
so what is left now is for it to come to plenary?
Is to come to plenary, and that's why we're quite worried that there is a delay.
Indeed. That's worrisome indeed. But yesterday we saw Honorable Onyejiocha, Nkiru Onyejiocha, talking about how women are also making serious plans to include affirmative action, to include women, having more women in the House and also in government in general. And she was talking about how, I think for the House, they're expecting there'll be 2 more constituencies created to ensure that women, or 2 more spaces in each state for women, and I think in the Senate 1 more space for women, and then in the State House of Assembly, I wasn't quite clear on that one, but in the Federal Capital Territory, there'll be 1 extra, I think, created also to ensure that women are coming in. The first question is, first, how is this going to work? If you're creating more constituencies, what are the guarantees that political parties will be willing to field women? And then the second is, isn't this already increasing the cost of governance which we want to come down?
When we look at the Second Republic, the 1979 Constitution guided it. And the 1979 Constitution had a provision for 450 seats for the House of Representatives. What the 1999 Constitution did was to reduce it. The 1979 Constitution also had provisions for 5 seats, Senate seats for each state.
5 Senate seats?
Yes, that was...
Well, the states were much bigger then.
Yes.
The states are much bigger. Right now, the states are much smaller.
Yes, but it had 5 seats for senates, for women, for representation. What you have seen now is, of course, that there are less numbers in terms of the House of Representatives, less numbers in terms of the senatorial representation.
And we're still complaining that there are still too many.
Then it came to about 545. With these new seats being proposed, because when you look at, I think it's very worrisome, and Nigeria continues to be on the back in terms of all of the achievements being made around the world. When you look at our neighbors, when you look around the world, when you look at African countries, the numbers of women is impressive. You look at Rwanda, more than 50% of seats are taken up by women. When you look at Senegal, they have what they call parité, which means parity, equal numbers of men and women. And you look around, more and more women are being represented. What we have seen in Nigeria since 1999, when this Fourth Republic came in, is that you have less and less women. Today we have only 6 senators that are women.
Out of 109?
Out of 109. And about 27, 28 in the House of Representatives.
I'm letting you make that point because, I mean, I want our viewers to be able to appreciate why this is needed.
It is needed.
However, the question is this the only way we can include women?
I think all the options have been looked at. All the options have been looked at because when you go towards the Beijing Declaration or even national policy on women, it says 35% in both elected and appointive positions. This hasn't happened. When you look at the political parties, their discrimination against women is incredible. In some cases, even men are women leaders in political party positions.
So how do we ensure, I mean, without exactly increasing the number of people, because I doubt very strongly that a lot of, I don't know, even though it would seem that this has been accepted by the Honorable Nkiru, I don't know if you can play her track, says that, you know, this has been accepted largely, but they're still lobbying. They are still lobbying to ensure that, you know, this eventually goes through. However, looking at just how big it's going to make, you know, it's going to increase the number in both chambers of the National Assembly. Is this really the way to go?
I think it's the way to go. I think that unless you legislate that political parties must field a certain number of women, with the current numbers available now, unless you do that successfully, then you're not going to see any significant change. And there's been a lot of resistance to that proposal. That proposal has been on the table for years, and no one has been courageous enough to do so. What is happening is simply that the National Assembly, the State House of Assembly, hopefully will come on board on this, as saying that for each state creates 2 more seats. INEC would have the responsibility of delineating the state into 2 so that you can elect 2 women. And in this case, the parties have no discretion about it. It must be women. Then the entire state has to elect 1 more person for Senate who will be a woman. And the parties have no discretion about it. They have to field a woman. And for the State House of Assembly, because if you look at the State House of Assembly today, some states have no women in the State House Assembly. In fact, a majority of states have no more than 2-3 women. To the point that the women committee, which is not a bad thing, but the women committee is being headed by men, simply because there are no women in some State House Assembly to chair those committees. You would think that if a man chairs a women's committee, then perhaps he would be more persuasive and all of that. But having a man chair a women's committee only because there is no woman emphasizes the depth of the problem that we are in. And I think that if the country has to pay a little bit more to ensure that a significant part of its population are effective in governance, then I think that means a lot. And you cannot have some of the best educated people in the world, some of the best accomplished part of the gender divide excluded from your politics. And maybe perhaps that's why the country is where it is in today, the absence of women in the room.
You know, I want to really be biased on that and say maybe that's why we are where we are. But let's quickly listen to Honorable Nkiru Onyejocha and then flip this to Lagos.
Other countries have made this concerted effort to think outside the box. How will it work? And I believe that this is the only way to work in this country, because you have a lot of people that you agree with something on principle, and then the next day people talk to them and they change their mind. So, but if it's law, and I can tell you that the president have directed some ministers to liaise with parliament to see that women are included. And so we are lobbying everybody to make sure that this one passes. So the issue of party not being able to feed anybody, party A doesn't want to feed a woman, party B will feed.
Yeah, Mr. Wanko, I'm just wondering, you know, the last two general elections, major ones, we've had postponements for a while now. So with this planned amendment of the Electoral Act, how is that going to impact on subsequent general elections such that there will be no need whatsoever to have any postponement? Because we remember that the current INEC chairman did say we needed to have a conversation about electoral management in this country.
Thank you, Chamberlain. When you look at the current proposals in the bill before the National Assembly, it even brings forward the process of nomination of candidates, which means that if the bill were to pass today, you will have to see political parties begin nominations of the nomination processes in the first quarter of next year. So in reality, the next elections is around the corner, and I think that's the worry that most Nigerians express when they see that so much has not been done in this current dispensation, and so much is still pending, and the law itself has not been passed. But once it begins on time, it then means that everything would be in place. The political parties will have enough notice issued by INEC. They would have enough time to prepare for their primaries. INEC would have enough time to prepare in terms of being able to ensure that the nomination process is conducted well, that they monitor it and get results, and prepare all of the processes leading up to the elections. Most times, the elections are postponed because the Electoral Commission has not had enough time to prepare. And when you look at the postponements that happened on April 2nd of 2011, and happened again in 2015, and happened again in 2019, it's been indicative of the delay in preparedness of the Electoral Commission. Some of it caused by, of course, the delay in passing the Electoral Act, and then all of the logistics issues around political parties not being able to conduct rancor-free primaries. So I think that they worry about getting the National Assembly to just really go ahead and pass the Electoral Act is something that all of us are very anxious to see the National Assembly do. And I've had some reports from the National Assembly saying, oh, there's a sequence that they want to follow. They want to pass the PIB in May and pass the Electoral Act in June. If the committees, joint committees of the National Assembly on electoral matters have done their work, then I don't see why the Electoral Act should not have been scheduled in the order paper for immediate plenary discussions to begin. I don't see the connection between PIB and the Electoral Act. The PIB has been in the National Assembly for more than 15 years, and we are heading towards the point where the PIB will become obsolete itself, simply because the world is moving ahead, and we are still here talking about oil. The world is moving to other sources of energy. Countries that had relied a lot on oil.
Just one moment, Mr. Wanko.
Their state assets. And Saudi Arabia last week was talking about.
Well, there are so many issues to address on all of this matter, and most certainly it is as disconcerting as can be. You know, I mean, you've talked about the logistics, even though there are questions about that one we wanted to bring to you, and then you've also talked about the preparedness of the political class and all of that, or a lack of it. But I don't know if you can tell us how these amendments, these proposed amendments, and the bill that we want to become a law addresses the finances or financing of elections, especially from the party levels. Because you know that so many people would say, look, how will the young people that will want to come into politics be able to afford the costs of getting forms, of campaigning and stuff like that? In any way, how do you think this law, this new proposition, addresses some of these concerns?
In the electoral law, there is what you call campaign limits, levels of campaign finance, and this new law has looked at it and made suggestions on the extent of funding of it. When you look at the previous law, it sets limits of what can be spent. And so for the Senate, it sets a certain limit, for the House, for the presidency, for the governorship. But when you look at what has happened to our currency, and inflation and the economy, even with the suggested reductions in terms of what can be spent, you would find that the politicians always find loopholes. And I think that what the Electoral Act is seeking to do is to create processes for internal democracy within the parties, because the key thing within political parties is to what extent do you ensure that your internal processes opens up the space for all of those stakeholders within it to seek elections, the inclusivity of the process, whether it's of young people, of women, of persons who are hampered or handicapped in some ways. How do you get all of them to be able to participate in the process without the internal crookedness of the political parties affecting the aspirations of those who want to participate in governance? And I think that is what you do have the Electoral Act trying to address. But I think the major thing is also the understanding of individuals. To some extent, you can regulate human conduct, but in a lot of ways, we've found that the intricacies of human behavior has always found a way of wriggling around the problem, and that has been part of the challenge of inclusivity for persons in the Nigerian political process.
Well, we definitely look forward to the Electoral Act getting the attention that it deserves, because I just don't know how that is going to work, especially with the current situation. But hopefully, you know, the members, especially the principal officers, will remember their promise, their commitment to deliver this in the first quarter. Now that they're behind schedule, perhaps apologize for that and see how it is that they can bring this back to the fore and give it the ready attention that it deserves. And it's also very good to see that we're looking for how to work, according to Ibukwan Woshika, the remaining valuable percentage of our assets, and that's talking about the inclusion of women. We continue to thank you for keeping an eye on things for us on behalf of Nigerians. Thank you so much for that and for sharing your thoughts this morning, Mr. Clement Wanko, who is the Executive Director of Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you, Mokbe.
Well, that's where we have to leave it for the show today. Thank you for sending in your comments. Let us know what you make of the fact that now there are also proposals to include women compulsorily, as a matter of fact, into the National Assembly by creating 2 extra spaces in each state for the House and then 1 seat extra for the Senate. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think it's going to work? Thank you for watching this morning. Amal Kwelgun Yusuf.
Well, perhaps you should also add, what are your thoughts on including youths as well?
Well, you just added that.
Well, yeah, I mean, come on. because I mean, it is equally critical. Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Musa. Goodbye.